The fighter leader, the long hump. Every member, every load, one direction. There is a moment during every long military hike when the formation stops pretending. The early conversations fade, the jokes become shorter, the straps begin cutting into your shoulders, boots grow heavier, and hot spots form beneath socks. The road stretches further than anyone wants to see, and every unnecessary item in the pack begins announcing its weight. That is when the truth comes out. A forced march, or as Marines commonly call it, a hump, is more than a test of physical endurance. It is organizational gut check. It reveals preparation, it exposes weak communication, it tests discipline, and it measures trust and shows whether leaders truly know their people.
Most importantly, it reveals whether a collection of individuals can carry separate loads, endure shared hardships, and continue moving in the same direction as one fighting organization. As a Marine infantryman, I completed my share of humps. I marched beneath the sun, through darkness, over hard roads, across uneven terrains, and under loads that seemed to grow heavier and heavier with every mile. But looking back, I realized we were carrying far more than weapons, ammunition, water, radios, medical supplies, and field equipment. We were carrying responsibility. Every Marine, every individual had equipment, but every piece served a collective purpose. Every person occupied a position and formation. Every leader maintained accountability. Every corpsman watched for signs of injury. Every radio operator protected our flow of information, and every security element remained alert. We carried different things, but we carried them towards the same destination. That is one of the clearest pictures of leadership I have ever known. A great organization is not made of people carrying identical loads. It's made of people carrying their assigned responsibilities, helping one another endure the journey, and moving together towards shared objectives. That is the lesson of the long hump I wish to provide before you today. The march before the machine. Long before aircraft, armored vehicles, helicopters, and tactical transport, armies moved primarily by foot. Military history was often shaped by which force can move farther, maintain order, preserve its equipment, and still arrive prepared to fight. Ancient armies used marching to build discipline and maneuver large formations. Centuries later, military commanders continue using rapid and extended marches to gain surprise, reinforce threatened positions, concentrate combat power, and reach decisive ground before the enemy. The term forced march traditionally describes movement conducted under unusual urgency, at a pace beyond the ordinary rate. It was not simply walk farther for the sake of suffering. It was movement driven by operational necessity. During the American Revolution, mobility repeatedly influenced whether forces could evade destruction, combine at the right location, or surprise an opponent. The march of American and French forces from New York toward Virginia in 1781 covered more than 400 miles and helped place decisive combat power at Yorktown. Military history contains countless similar examples in which endurance, logistics, discipline, and timing mattered just as much as battlefield courage. The technology of warfare has changed, but the principles remain. A force that cannot move cannot concentrate. A force that cannot concentrate cannot create advantage. A force that arrives exhausted, scattered, uninformed, or missing essential equipment may reach the destination without being ready to accomplish the mission. That is why military marching has never been only about distance. It's about arriving with the organization intact and capable of performing what comes next. The finish line is not the mission. Readiness at the finish line is the mission. Modern organizations should remember that distinction. Reaching a deadline means very little if the team arrives burned out, divided, poorly informed, and unable to sustain the next phase. Growth is not merely moving faster. Leadership is ensuring the organization remains functional while it moves forward. The hunt begins before the first step. An effective military movement begins long before the formation steps off. Leaders study the mission, terrain, weather, distance, timeline, anticipated threats, water requirements, medical considerations, communications plan, and equipment needs. Routes are examined, responsibilities are assigned, accountability procedures are established. At the small unit level, leaders inspect their Marines. Do they have the required equipment? Is the equipment serviceable? Is the load packed correctly? Are heavy items properly positioned? Are canteens or hydration systems filled? Are weapons maintained? Are batteries working? Does the Marine have the necessary socks and foot care supplies? Does everyone understand the route, formation, pace, signals, security responsibilities, and actions to take if the unit makes contact or becomes separated? These inspections are not administrative inconveniences, they are acts of leadership. A leader who checks equipment before the movement is not communicating distrust. That leader is preventing avoidable failure. There's a major difference between micromanagement and responsible inspection. Micromanagement attempts to control every action because the leader cannot release authority. Inspection verifies the organization is prepared to execute its responsibility. Trust does not eliminate accountability. Trust makes honest accountability possible. This is where the first principle of the fighter leader emerges. Model the standard.
The leader cannot demand preparation while arriving unprepared. The leader's equipment must be ready. The leader must understand the route. The leader must know the plan and must carry the proper load. The leader must maintain discipline when fatigue begins stripping away appearances. During a difficult movement, people watch the leader very closely. They notice whether the leader is prepared. They notice whether the leader carries the same conditions as everyone else. They notice whether the leader remains composed. They notice whether the leader becomes irritable, disappears into the front of the formation, or begins blaming others when the plan encounters friction. A leader cannot stand outside the hardship and lecture people about endurance. The fighter leader steps into the formation. Leadership is preparation for transformation. Everyone carries weight, but not everyone carries the same weight. A military formation presents a powerful organizational truth. Equality of commitment does not require sameness of responsibility. One Marine may carry a machine gun, another carries ammunition, another carries a radio. The corpsman carries medical supplies. A fire team leader carries the responsibility of controlling Marines. A squad leader monitors multiple teams. The platoon sergeant or platoon commander must understand the larger tactical picture. The platoon sergeant watches accountability, logistics, pace, discipline, and the conditions of the formation. The loads are different because the responsibilities are different. This matters in leadership. Strong teams do not demand that every person perform the same function. They ensure that every function contributes to the same mission. The question is not, is everyone carrying exactly what I'm carrying? The question is everyone faithfully carrying what the mission requires of them? Confusion begins when organizations mistake uniformity for unity. Uniformity says everyone must look alike, think alike, and contribute in the same way. Unity says our abilities and responsibilities may differ, but our destination is shared. The radio operator cannot abandon the radio because someone else's load appears lighter. The machine gunner cannot exchange the weapon for something more comfortable simply because the road is long. The corpsman cannot discard medical supplies because they have not become convenient or they become inconvenient. The purpose determines the load. In civilian organizations, the loads may be strategy, budgeting, operations, human resources, logistics, coaching, customer service, compliance, or organizational care. Some responsibilities are highly visible, others remain almost invisible until something goes wrong. But every role matters. The organization moves well when people understand three things: what they are carrying, why it matters, where the organization is going. When any one of those become unclear, the formation begins to lose cohesion. This is a leadership decision. Every leader wants progress. Not every leader understands pace. Move too slowly, and the unit may miss the opportunity. Move too quickly, and the formation may break apart. Military movement requires leaders to think beyond the strongest individual. A formation is not successful because the fastest person reaches the objective first. It's successful because the unit reaches the objective together, on time, with its people accounted for and prepared to continue the mission. That requires communication from every part of the formation. Information must move forward and backward. Leaders need to know whether the rear of the formation is maintaining pace. They need updates on injuries, heat concerns, water consumption, equipment problems, route conditions, gaps, and security. Subordinate leaders must communicate what they see rather than allowing problems to grow silently. This is organizational awareness. The person at the front cannot see everything happening in the rear. The senior executive cannot automatically know what the newest employee is experiencing. The commander's perspective is broader, yes, but is not complete. That is why information must travel in every direction, not merely downward as instruction, but upward as truth, and laterally as coordination. When leaders punish bad news, people stop reporting reality. When people start reporting reality, small problems march quietly toward catastrophe. The fighter leader creates a formation in which someone can say, the pace is creating separation. We have a developing medical issue. This piece of equipment is failing. The team does not understand the change. We need to adjust before this becomes a larger problem. That is not weakness. That is disciplined communication. A situation report does not become disloyal because the situation is uncomfortable. Truth is one of the loads that every leader must be willing to carry. Corpsman in the leadership of care. No reflection on the Marine Corps hike will be complete without recognizing the Navy corpsman. The corpsman moves with the formation, carries a load, endures the terrain, and remains attentive to the physical condition of everyone around him. Field corpsmen train to serve alongside Marines, providing medical support in the same environments in which the unit operates. During movement, that responsibility may include monitoring hydration, treating foot problems, assessing injuries, recognizing heat or cold related illnesses, and advising leaders when the conditions threatens a Marine or the mission. That role illustrates an essential principle. Care is not separate from readiness. Care produces readiness. The Marine whose developing blisters is ignored may become the casualty who slows the formation later. The person showing early signs of heat injury may become a medical emergency if pride silences judgment. The teammate who is struggling may not need condemnation. He may need water, treatment, or load adjustment. or a leader willing to notice. Changing socks can look insignificant to someone who has never completed a long movement under load. It is not insignificant. Dry socks, properly fitted boots, foot powder, early treatment of hot spots, and attention to blisters can determine whether a person remains effective. Marine training materials emphasize keeping feet clean and dry because small problems left untreated become larger injuries. This principle reaches far beyond the military. Every organization has blisters. They begin as minor irritations, unclear expectations, unresolved conflicts, excessive workload, failing systems, eroding trust, or people quietly carrying more than their fair share. Weak leaders dismiss them because the organization is still moving. Fighter leaders address them because they understand that movement alone does not equal health. The wise leader asks, where is the friction developing? Who has been silently compensating for a broken process? Who is near exhaustion? What small problems are we tolerating that may eventually stop the formation? Leadership is not proven by ignoring pain. It is proven by responding to the pain before it becomes incapacity. Accountability means more than counting heads. During a military movement, leaders maintain accountability of personnel, weapons, sensitive items, and equipment. No one simply assumes everything is present. Counts are conducted, gear is checked, changes are reported. If the formation halts, leaders verify their people. If equipment is transferred, responsibility is made clear. If someone falls behind, the chain of leadership identifies the problem and responds. Accountability is not merely knowing how many people began the movement, it is knowing their condition throughout the movement. Many organizations count employees without accounting for them. A name appears on the roster, a person attends the meeting. A green indicator appears on a dashboard. A task is marked complete. But does the leader know whether that person understands the mission? Whether they possess the necessary resources? Whether they are carrying an unsustainable load? Whether their equipment, authority, training, and expectations match the responsibility they have been assigned? Head count is not human awareness. A fighter leader does not treat people as interchangeable pieces in a formation. The leader knows that every person represents capability, experience, potential, and trust. Accountability asks more than, are you here? It asks, are you prepared, connected, informed, and capable of continuing? Take the hit. The hardest miles expose the difference between leaders who possess authority and leaders who accept responsibility. When the pace is wrong, the route is misunderstood, water was poorly planned, communication breaks down, or the formation becomes separated, insecure leaders immediately search for someone beneath them to blame. Fighter leaders do something different. They take the hit. Now, taking the hit does not mean concealing misconduct, excusing poor performance, or accepting responsibility for choices a person knowingly made against the standard. It means leaders accept responsibility for the conditions they were entrusted to influence. Did I inspect? Did I prepare them? Did I communicate clearly? Did I confirm understanding? Did I allocate the right resources? Did I listen when subordinate leaders reported problems? Did I adjust when the evidence showed the original plan was failing? Did I place mission accomplishment and troop welfare above my own ego? The fighter leader provides top cover for people acting ethically and in good faith. The leader corrects problems without humiliating people and conducts honest after action reviews without converting every imperfection into a search for a scapegoat. On the long hump, blame does not make the pack lighter. Leadership does. Eventually, someone struggles. It may be the newest Marine. It may be someone recovering from an injury. It may be the person carrying the heaviest equipment. It may even be the Marine who normally appears strongest. Fatigue has a way of humbling everyone. When someone begins to fall behind, the unit faces a revealing choice. Will the formation mock that person, abandon the person, pretend not to notice, or respond as a team? Sometimes the answer is encouragement. Sometimes it's treatment. Sometimes the load must be redistributed. Sometimes the pace must be adjusted. Sometimes a leader must determine that continuing would create an unacceptable risk. Good leaders distinguish discomfort from injury, unwillingness from incapacity, and a momentary struggle from a pattern of avoiding responsibility.
Helping someone does not always mean removing their load. Sometimes leadership means walking beside them until they rediscover the strength to carry it. At other times, the team may temporarily redistribute critical equipment so that the entire formation can continue. That is not an invitation for chronic irresponsibility. It is an acknowledgement that mutual support is part of collective strength. A team is not strong because no one ever struggles. A team is strong because struggle does not automatically become isolation. The fighter leader asks a hard but necessary question. Are we building people who can carry responsibility, or merely creating dependence on the strongest members? Healthy teams support recovery while restoring ownership. The objective is not to carry someone forever. The objective is to help that person stand, regain capability, and return to the formation with dignity.
Formation moves at the speed of trust. During a long movement, trust is everywhere. You trust the Marine ahead of you will maintain proper distance. You trust the Marine behind you will communicate a problem. You trust that the navigator understands the route. You trust that leaders will not recklessly expand the formation. You trust that the corpsman will respond to medical needs when needed. You trust that each person bought the required equipment for the mission. You trust that people will remain disciplined when no one is praising them. Trust is not sentimental, it's operational. Every inspection, honest update, corrected deficiency, shared hardship, and kept promise becomes a deposit in what we call the bank of trust. When leaders build that account before hardship, the formation can draw from it when the road becomes difficult. But when the account is empty, every adjustment is interpreted as incompetence, every correction is disrespect, and every hardship is a betrayal. Leaders can often attempt to create unity during the crisis, but by then it may be too late. The long hump does not create character from nothing. It reveals the character, habits, relationships, and systems the organization developed long before stepping off. That's the praise. When the unit finally reaches its destination, the leader may have issued the orders, controlled the pace, received the reports, and made the adjustments, but the formation covered the distance. Every Marine carried something. Every small unit leader maintained accountability. Someone carried the radio, someone carried ammunition, someone watched the flank, someone treated injuries, someone encouraged the struggling Marine, someone maintained humor when morale began fading, someone quietly fulfilled a responsibility that prevented a larger failure. That is why the fighter leader must pass the praise. Weak leaders absorb collective success and distribute personal blame. Fighter leaders absorb responsibility and distribute recognition. Leaders should be able to identify the people whose discipline carried the organization through the difficult miles. Praise should be specific enough to demonstrate that the leader was paying attention. Not simply, good job, team, but you kept the formation moving when the situation changed. You identified the equipment problem before it became a mission failure. You carried your teammate without abandoning your own responsibilities. You maintained the standard when fatigue gave everybody permission to lower it. Specific praise teaches the organization which behaviors created success. Recognition is not merely a reward for performance, it is a reinforcement of our culture. Corporate hump. Every organization eventually faces its own forced march: a merger, a crisis, a restructuring, a demanding project, a leadership transition, a period of rapid growth, a financial setback, a cultural transformation, a mission that must be accomplished with limited time and imperfect information. When that season arrives, motivational slogans will not carry the organization very far. The team will rely on what was packed before the journey began: trust, training, communication, clarity, discipline, relationships, competence, and character. The organizational pact also contains everything leaders failed to address: unclear roles, unresolved conflict, poor systems, distrust, ethical compromises, neglected development, and exhausted people. Under pressure, every neglected issue gains weight. That is why the forced march, or hump, is the ultimate organizational gut check. It answers questions that the conference room presentation cannot. Do people understand the destination? Does every person know what they are responsible for carrying? Are responsibilities distributed according to capability and mission requirements? Can truthful information move through the organization? Do leaders know the conditions of their people? Are small problems treated before they become casualties? Can the team maintain its standards under fatigue? Will strong members help struggling members without enabling irresponsibility? Do leaders accept responsibility when plans fail? Will the people who carried the organization receive the credit? You cannot fake these answers once the formation is moving. Leader's place in the formation. There are times when the leader must move to the front. The formation needs direction, presence, confidence, and example. There are times when the leader must move through the middle. The leader needs to feel the pace, hear the conversations, observe the morale, and understand how the plan is being experienced. There are times when the leader must look from the rear. That is where gaps become visible. That is where people struggling to maintain contact can be seen. That is where the difference between the intended pace and the actual condition of the formation becomes undeniable. This reflects what I call the leader's frame. The fighter leader steps into the frame to build trust and participate in the reality of the team. Then the leader steps outside the frame to gain perspective, recognize patterns, anticipate danger, and adjust the direction. Remain outside too long, and the leader becomes disconnected. Remain inside without ever gaining perspective, and the leader may become consumed by the immediate struggle. Leadership requires both presence and perspective. The leader must know when to guide from the front and understand from the middle, and an account for the people, equipment, mission, and organization from the rear. One destination. The deepest lesson of the hump is not that strong people can endure heavy loads. It is that disciplined people can carry different loads and still move as one. The objective is not individual comfort. It is not personal visibility. It is not proving who is the toughest. It is getting the formation to the destination, together, accountable, equipped, and ready for what comes next. That is leadership. Model the standard so people can see what commitment looks like. Take the hit so responsibility does not roll downhill onto those trusted to you. Pass the praise so people who carried the mission know their contribution mattered. Inspect before movement, communicate during movement, care for people throughout the movement, maintain security when fatigue narrows attention. Address the hot spots before they become disabling wounds. Redistribute weight when mission and humanity require it. Never confuse being at front with being aware of the entire formation. And remember, the person carrying the organization's heaviest burden may not be the person making the most noise. Leadership is not measured by how far ahead of the formation you can walk. It is measured by whether your presence helps the formation move with greater purpose, discipline, trust, and unity. Every member, every load, one direction. That is how fighting units move. That is how healthy organizations grow. That is how fighter leaders lead. The road will reveal what the meeting room can conceal. The question is not merely whether your organization is moving. The real question is when the road becomes long, the load becomes heavy, and the destination is still beyond sight, will your people continue moving as one? God bless. Sergeant Major Lytle.